Much, Chairman Peters and Ranking Member Portman. I want to thank the witnesses not only for appearing today to talk about this important national security issue, but for your service. I appreciate it very much. I want to focus on discrete areas where I think we need to do more to improve the cybersecurity of our nation. So first question is to Acting Director Wales and Mr. DeRusha. Acting Director Wales, you testified at a hearing last week that CISA's Continuous Diagnostics and Mitigation Program, or CDM, is the foundation upon which we can build further capabilities to secure the federal network and be able to detect a breach similar to SolarWinds. It's clear that we need to improve the CDM program and build additional layers of protection on top of it. But before we can make those much-needed enhancements, we need CDM to be fully implemented in the first place. That's why Senator Cornyn and I introduced a bill last Congress to codify CDM. However, last August, a report issued by the Government Accountability Office found that some agencies were encountering problems deploying CDM. So, Acting Director Wales and Mr. DeRusha, what are CISA and OMB doing to ensure that CDM is deployed as quickly as possible across all civilian agencies and that deployments accurately detect and monitor all devices on the network? We can start with either one of you, however you want to.
So I'll start and then turn it over to Chris. We believe, as I stated last week, that CDM is really the foundation to ensure that we can get capabilities out to 102 federal civilian executive branch agencies and have a common baseline of sets of tools and capabilities. And I'd say we are very focused on the small number of agencies that have had challenges with deploying some of the tools. I would say that it's not just one set. This is a suite of different capabilities that provide asset management, software and device management and configuration and patch management. There are different capabilities that they're deploying, and we have had success in getting almost all federal agencies and all parts of all federal agencies to a common baseline. There are obviously some outliers when you're talking about the scale and scope of the federal government. We are working hard to close out the first two phases of CDM, Phase 1 and Phase 2, this year, and so that we can move into Phase 3 and 4 and build additional capabilities, the types of capabilities that we need to get us better, deeper insights into what is happening at federal agencies. The one additional point that I will add is that when CDM was initially created, there was a division. Agencies had object-level view, meaning they could see into the individual devices on their networks, but CISA was not able to. I think we are now seeing the limitation that poses on our ability to have a comprehensive understanding of the cyber risk picture of the .gov, and we are hopeful that new guidance will come out of the administration soon that will move us towards CISA having broader and deeper insights into that level of detail and allow us to have the right level of visibility to provide, to execute our role when it comes to securing the .gov.
Okay, thank you. Mr. DeRusha?
Yes, Senator, I think Brandon's description is very accurate. We're aware of some challenges at certain agencies in implementation. I think the vision and the goal of CDM is right. In certain instances, we'll continue to look at implementation and make sure that the program's successful in those agencies. So at OMB in my office, we're discreetly attuned to that. This is a priority for both CISA and OMB to ensure that CDM is effectively delivered and that we can get to the full vision, which is getting that data back to CISA so that we can get away from Excel spreadsheet data calls and into live, real-time monitoring and action from CISA, which is the goal of the program. So we look forward to continuing to enhance it and learn from the past.
Well, thank you for those answers. Let me just check in on a couple of things. Are there additional authorities or other assistance that you need from Congress to ensure timely deployment of CDM? Do you have the tools you need, or what can we do to help further?
I don't believe we need additional authorities at this time.
Okay. Mr. DeRusha?
I agree. Senator, I don't believe we need additional authorities at this time.
Okay. And what capabilities are you planning on building on top of CDM to help ensure federal networks are protected into the future, especially as agencies increasingly adopt cloud products?
Sure. So I think one of the significant ones that we highlighted that is critical and we believe will be a key part of our implementation of the funding under the American Rescue Act is better endpoint detection and response tools. They would give us the ability to understand what is happening on critical servers and workstations. It would give us the ability to detect more malicious activity, to respond more quickly, and working with agencies to block anomalous behavior before it moves broadly into a network. So that's just one example of ways in which we're looking to use CDM to deploy that. 10 years ago, we couldn't move right there because agencies didn't even understand their full suite of assets on their network. So you couldn't have endpoints when you didn't know how many endpoints you had. And so I think we've now come to the point where those kinds of more sophisticated tools are now within our reach.
Thank you. Let me go on to another issue, again, to Acting Director Wales. You testified last week that the Microsoft Exchange attacks have heavily impacted state and local governments, which don't have the same resources or capacity to respond to cyber attacks as the federal government does. I'm concerned about the impact of these attacks on state and local entities, particularly when there are reports of China-based threat actors exploiting this vulnerability pretty much at will. So based on what you've seen from these two recent incidents, why do you think it is a national security imperative for the federal government to strongly support state and local governments in improving their cyber capabilities?
Yeah, ma'am, we could not agree more. Secretary Mayorkas spoke about this publicly as well. We want to work with Congress on ways in which we can identify how do we sustain the level of investment that state and locals need to put in place the cybersecurity architecture at the state and local level that's commensurate with the level of threat that they're facing. We know there are proposals for grant programs floating around both houses of Congress. Without prescribing one, I mean, we're eager to work with you on what those look like and how they can build capabilities. And also on the response end, another proposal out of the Cyberspace Laram Commission was for a cyber response and recovery fund that would allow that states could tap into when they are facing significant cybersecurity incidents. I think that's another area where we would love to work with this committee and others to make sure that we have the right whole of nation architecture in place and we don't have weak points, whether at the federal level, the state and local level, or in the private sector.
I appreciate that very much, and I'm one of the advocates of a standalone cybersecurity grant program. When you have as many small communities as I do who have been subject to attacks despite their best efforts, and the state chief information officers are all really advocating for this. They want to work with us, but finding the resources and the expertise to do it is tough. So I'd look forward to working with you on that. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator or Mr. Chairman, would it be all right if I just added briefly to that?
Yes, go ahead.
Sir, I just wanted to note that in addition to CISA's very important cybersecurity efforts with state and locals with regards to defensive networks, we're also working quite a bit with state and local officials from the FBI, as well as local law enforcement at that level in coordination with the U.S. Secret Service to see how we can build up capacity and capability of state and local officials to respond to cyber incidents and cyber threats. Obviously, we're always there to lend that assistance, but for example, with Secret Service through their National Training Center, we are jointly providing training to state and local officials. We're hosting police executives at our National Cyber Investigative Joint Task Force to provide them the national level insight into cyber threats, and we're also inviting state and local law enforcement to be part of our cyber task forces in our field offices, which are similar to our joint terrorism task forces, where they can actually work those threats jointly and thereby kind of grow their capacity to respond.
Well, thank you for that. And I know in New Hampshire how deeply our law enforcement and state and local officials appreciate their partnership with the FBI and the support you're all providing. So look forward to continue that relationship too. Thank you.